Marika's own words, O Radagon, leal hound of the Golden Order, thou art yet to become me. Thou art yet to become a god. Let us be shattered, both. Mine other self.
The Vitruvian Man is more than just a Renaissance-era drawing by the brilliant Leonardo da Vinci. It holds within a divine mystery of squaring the circle. The Vitruvian Man inscribes a human being simultaneously in a circle and a square, i.e. symbolically in the heavens and in nature, which together represent the totality of the universe. One may add an eternity in temporality, in wisdom, and in rationality. Within the drawing are two superimposed beings. One, the square, as evidenced by the hands touching the square, while the other is the circle, yet again seen by the hands touching the circle. It is thought that these two geometric shapes are meant to represent two very different things that are thought to inhabit a single individual. The circle, like mentioned earlier, is meant to represent the divine, the spirit, the more heavenly qualities, while the square is meant to represent the physical, the body, the qualities of nature. In the world of Elden Ring, this mystical and mathematical query is brought to life. I believe this simple drawing and divine meaning surrounding it holds the answers to the complex relationship between Marika and Radagon. Or, better put, the complex identity of this singular being. To get a better understanding of Marika and Radagon, we must first turn to Miquella. I believe the story of Miquella divesting himself of his flesh, his doubts, fears, vacillation, and even love, is the same thing that Marika did to ascend to godhood. Becoming a god seems to be divine or a spiritual quest, one that forces you to strip away everything else. Along our travels within the Shadow Lands, we find Miquella's crosses all etched with a very disturbing realization. He is divesting himself of his very flesh. Not only his flesh, but any emotion that would interfere with his ascension. He removes his entire physical body, arms, eyes, flesh, everything. He removes his feelings of doubt, fear, and even love. He becomes a divine spirit. He becomes numinous. Perhaps this is what it means to truly be a numen. The definition of numen is a spiritual force or influence often identified with a natural object, phenomenon, or place. Marika is certainly that for the Erdtree, and maybe even the entire lands between. Maybe the little sprites at the sites of grace are Marika herself, pointing us in a very particular direction. Perhaps Miquella was trying to be that for the Shadowlands. If becoming a numen means to divest themselves of everything to become a god, the description of the race might make more sense. Long-lived but seldom born. Something that doesn't happen all that often, but when it does, it's a 1,000-year voyage. Excuse the tangent, but I found it interesting. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This is just a flow of consciousness and not necessarily fleshed out theory, but I feel like there may be something to it. Anyhow, I think it's a fair assumption that we are shown this act of divesting for the purposes of Marika's story. Because Marika never speaks, and we don't know anything about her ascension, other than those few seconds in a trailer with a couple vague sentences, the developers are showing it to us through parallel stories, or stories that Jack the Mimic hers. In other words, I believe that what Miquella went through to become a god is the same thing that Marika went through. A total separation of herself into spiritual and physical, an abandonment of her other self. We all know by now that Marika is Radagon, sorry, spoiler alert, and that they are halves of a whole person. We find evidence of this through their respective source seals. Marika's increases the more spiritual aspects, while Radagon the more physical. I believe this also explains why red wolves are associated with Radagon, and why the misbegottens are as well. Those things represent the unfettered aspects of nature. Recall earlier that the Vitruvian Man is meant to reflect the dual nature of a singular person, the heavenly and the more animalistic side of a singular being. If Radagon represents the flesh, nature, the physical, it would follow that those things would be his kin of sort. I've always wondered why a god would need an Elden Lord. There aren't many gods in the pantheon that want or even need someone else to assist in their godhood. However, if that god is purely spiritual and can't physically enact their will on others, they would need an enforcer, someone powerful, someone with might and physical strength. Looking back on Godfrey's reign, he defeated all of Marika's foes. Nothing was left standing in the way of the Erdtree's rise to power. Even when Marika wanted to end the Liurnian Wars, she sent Radagon to do it. Certainly an all-powerful god would be able to handle a simple matter of territorial aggression, no? I believe that Marika and now Miquella, after their ascension to godhood, are completely spiritual beings on a higher level of existence. Sure, it seems that they still have this kind of spectral manifestation of a body, which would explain the statues and paintings, but because they divested of their lower physical selves, they need a physically powerful person to more or less hide behind, while they pull the strings behind the curtain. Let's revisit the Vitruvian man. Recall the two superimposed beings. Now, let's look at the statues of Marika and Radagon superimposed. Not only that, but look at where Marika's hands are touching, and where Radagon's are. Marika is the circle, the divine, the heavenly, while Radagon's is the square, the physical, nature. Another fascinating part regarding the Vitruvian man is that it was thought that the proportions of the human body were meant to show the microcosm of the universe, perhaps shedding some light onto why the Elden Beast looks like the universe mixed with the human nervous system. I believe by showing us the way Miquella ascended to godhood, we are finally able to understand Radagon's true origins. Radagon is Marika's physical body. Everything she divested to become a god. Her flesh, her eye, her heart, her feelings of doubt, her fear, perhaps even her love, all manifested into one person. This cast out and abandoned other self also seems to be the opposite sex of the one ascending. Miquella divests of his feminine self, Saint Trina, Marika, and Radagon. Interestingly, Ranni does the same thing. She too casts off her physical flesh and ascends to godhood while making us her consort. Was she aware of this requirement? Is that the purpose of the Night of Black Knives? Maybe it's true that Godwyn was a specific target on that fateful night, a slaying of her ascension. Within the DLC trailer, some have said that they can see the red at the ends of Marika's hair. Perhaps that is the last bit of Radagon, of her impurities, leaving her new divine self. Personally, I think it's just the color saturation, but let me know what you guys think. Now, this may help us understand the origins of Radagon, but how does he get back to Marika? It would seem like with Miquella, Radagon's body is spread out like the body of King Osiris. An arm here, a leg there, a heart over there, and so on. I believe this is where his Great Rune comes in, the Great Rune of the Unborn. We know that Radagon had it because he gifted it to Rennala. So, what if he used it on himself? Or, what if his Great Rune comes from the very act of him rebirthing his body anew? Obviously, this is pure speculation, but it seems to fit the narrative. What if someone near to Marika, someone who didn't want her to ascend to godhood, gathered these pieces of her discarded self and brought them together and used the Great Rune on them? We know that there seems to be a force that can mend broken things, as evidenced by the hefty, cracked pot. This hefty pot somehow mends itself when broken. Again, just ramblings of a madman, but it's an interesting thought. The law of regression tells us that all things yearn eternally to converge. If their separation was caused by Marika ascending to godhood, then it would fit within the world and laws of Elden Ring that the separation would eventually remerge. It's only a matter of time. What's interesting is that Marika seems to want freedom from her godhood. She tasks Hugh with smithing a weapon capable of killing a god.
Here's one. My masterpiece to slay a god. That's all I've lived for. And my promise to Queen Marika.
Rodrika tells us that God is Marika.
Given this great entreaty to craft a weapon which could slay a god. Though I can't help but think of it as a curse, a fearsome curse, put on him by Queen Marika. And if that's the case, I'm not sure there's anything we can do. So slay her with the weapons he smithed. Slay the god Marika, who cursed us all.
She smashes the Elden Ring, and she brings us, the Tarnished, back to life, guides us to her, and gives us all the necessary tools to end her imprisonment. Saint Trina illuminates us that godhood is not all that great. She tells us that godhood is a prison, a caged divinity. To me, Marika certainly looks imprisoned within the Erdtree. Perhaps her arms being positioned in this way is more than the Vitruvian man, but also meant to show her imprisonment, outside of the obvious Christian tones, of course. Not only that, but we also seem to have an answer to the death spear in her womb. I believe it to be the physical manifestation and representation of the curse put on all of her children. Anything coming from her womb would be tainted with this curse. The only way to free herself from this prison is to reverse what she did to ascend in the first place. If divesting her mortal flesh made Marika an immortal and eternal god, the only way to make her mortal again and allow Master Hugh to finally fulfill his purpose is to rejoin with the mortal part. It makes her vulnerable again, mortal again, killable again. To summarize, I believe Radagon is Marika's divested flesh, as I think many of us are speculating. This divesting of the physical, animalistic lower self seems to be a necessary act to ascend to godhood. Radagon, being abandoned and broken, like everything else in the Shadowlands, uses his great rune to rebirth his body anew. Being half of a whole and abandoned, he desperately yearns to be complete, in an unending search for his other half, because that's what the law of regression forces him to do. Located in the Erdtree Sanctuary, we find the Golden Order Principia, a dense and complex academic treatise that contains the Order's fundamental principles, Radagon's Rings of Light, and the Law of Regression. It is within this book that we find Radagon's name, the incantation that reveals that he and Marika are one, and the law that all things yearn eternally to converge. Marika, unable to endure the curse of godhood and the curse put on her children, wishes to die. She imprisons Master Hugh to smith the weapon capable of killing a god, her, but she needs her other half. She needs her flesh, for that is the only thing that can make her mortal. She beckons Radagon to the capital, converges with her other half, and shatters the Elden Ring, the very source of her power, making her vulnerable and mortal, waiting for someone strong enough to finish the job. By the time we finish the game, God is dead. However, the Elden Ring remains nestled within Marika's womb, and we essentially become the consort to a corpse. Our coming age is meaningless because the god of the lands between is gone. Like so many others, she has suffered long enough. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving it a like and subscribing to the channel, as I will be doing many more videos covering the DLC and lore surrounding it. As always, much love, and I will see you in the next one.